Spoštovani gospodje, spoštovane gospe, cenjeni gostje, z veseljem in ponosom vas pozdravljam na prvem slovenskem kongresu ekonomske demokracije v organizaciji Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo. To je nedvomno pomemben dogodek, ki bo zaznamoval velik korak v smeri uresničevanja idej za bolj odgovorno, v prihodnost usmerjeno družbo in pravičnejši gospodarski prostor. Z nami so strokovnjaki z celotnega sveta, uspešni gospodarstveniki in drugi pomembni deležniki, zato smo prepričani, da bomo z razpravo o aktualnih in relevantnih temah doprinesli k skupni dolgoročni viziji. Pozdravljam tudi vse gledalce, ki spremljate spletni prenos v živo in se zahvaljujem za vaše zanimanje. K uvodnemu nagovoru najprej vabim našega gostitelja, soustanovitelja in direktorja Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo ter soavtorja tehničnih konceptov evropskega ESOP modela, d.o.o. Izvolite.
Pred 5 leti smo z ustanovno skupino Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo dobili priložnost, da se o naših idejah pogovorimo z enim izmed bolj uveljavljenih slovenskih pravnikov. Jaz sem z nekim mladostnim zagonom in mogoče celo malo naivnim zagonom razlagal o tem, kako bomo iz Amerike prenesli ESOP, kako bomo delali s podjetji in prestrukturirali podjetja v smer lastništva zaposlenih, kako bomo delali na tem, da zakoni v Sloveniji spodbudijo rast lastništva zaposlenih in tako naprej. In njegov odziv je bil izredno pozitiven, celo strinjal se je s tem, da je to prihodnost za slovensko gospodarstvo, ki si jo lahko skupaj želimo. Tisto, kar mi je pa najbolj ostalo v spominu, je pa njegov, kako je zaključil ta pogovor. Rekel mi je takole: gospod Tej, vi ste v tem trenutku na obali Španije, do pasu ste zabredali v vodo in se pognali v morje plavati čez Atlantski ocean proti Ameriki. Jaz sem seveda že takrat razumel, kaj je s tem hotel povedati. Prispodoba govori o tem, da je projekt, ki smo se ga lotili na inštitutu, izredno kompleksen, zahteva veliko znanja, veliko veščin, ogromno časa in tudi sredstev in politične volje konec koncev. Ampak ja, danes, po 5 letih, bi rekel, da plavamo mogoče nekje tam pri Kanarskih otokov. Dejansko smo bili uspešni v prilagoditvi ameriškega ESOP-a, prenesli smo ga v Slovenijo, vzpostavili smo ga v prvih podjetjih, torej do konca leta pričakujemo, da bodo prva 4 podjetja prešla v last zaposlenih preko ESOP modela. Izvedli smo za okrog 1000 podjetnikov, zaposlenih, menedžerjev, različna izobraževanja in delavnice na temo finančne pismenosti, participativnega vodenja, kulture lastništva in tako naprej. Tudi napisali smo leta 2020 predlog politike in posodobili v letošnjem letu z naslovom European ESOP, na podlagi katerega je bil napisan osnutek zakona, ki gre zdaj preko Ministrstva za delo, družino, socialne zadeve in enake možnosti v usklajevanje in potem v obravnavo, upamo, da kmalu. In nekako tudi mednarodna skupnost se je začela zanimati za modele, ki jih smo začeli vzpostavljati v Sloveniji. Tako da bi rekel, da smo Slovenijo postavili na svetovni zemljevid ekonomske demokracije. Kongres prvi, samo Mendoni. Ta prvi slovenski kongres ekonomske demokracije smo organizirali z namenom, da predstavimo dobro prakso, da povežemo deležnike, ki ste danes tukaj, in da prvič naznanimo vizijo 1030. To je vizija, ki postavlja cilj, da do konca leta 2030 10% vseh zaposlenih v privatnem sektorju postane solastnikov podjetij, v katerih delajo. To je približno 60 000 slovenskih delavcev. Nekateri boste rekli, da je vizija mogoče malo visoko leteča, celo naivna, ampak jaz sem prepričan, da je dosegljiva. Dosegljiva je, ker bomo z inštitutom nadgradili naše delo in še probali povečati impact, ki smo ga imeli pri spodbujanju lastništva zaposlenih v Sloveniji. Dosegljiva je, ker je vsak dan več ambasadorjev iz gospodarstva, čudovitih vrhunskih podjetnikov, delavcev, ki za dobro prakso lastništva zaposlenih dokazujejo, da je to na eni strani vrhunska strategija za doseganje visoke dodane vrednosti v slovenskem gospodarstvu, na drugi strani je pa to strategija, ki slovensko gospodarstvo vodi v smer družbene odgovornosti. Dosegljiva je, če bo politika držala svoje besede in podprla naše ukrepe, naše predloge ukrepov, torej z zakoni in davčnimi olajšavami, ki bi spodbujali solastništvo zaposlenih. In toliko lažje bo ta vizija dosegljiva, če bomo uspešni pri povezovanju vseh vas, ki ste danes tukaj, deležnikov iz gospodarstva, iz finančnega sektorja, socialnih partnerjev, svetov delavcev, lokalnih samouprav, medijev in tako naprej. Vsi vi lahko odigrate majhno ali veliko vlogo pri tem, da usmerimo prihodnost slovenskega gospodarstva v smer inovativnosti, stabilnosti in družbene odgovornosti. Tako da, če mi dovolite malo osladnosti za zaključek, bi vas povabil, da zaplavate z nami. Zahvalil bi se vam izredno iskreno, da ste danes tukaj. Meni in ekipi Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo ogromno pomeni, da smo uspeli organizirati ta dogodek, dobiti ljudi, kot ste vi, ker to pomeni, da smo naredili nekaj v to smer in da lahko skupaj nadaljujemo še močnejši. Tako da hvala, uživajte v programu in se vidimo.
Najlepša hvala tej. Zdaj pa prisluhnimo besedam predsednika Vlade Republike Slovenije, dr. Roberta Goloba. Ker ima gospod predsednik danes neodložljivo srečanje na Svetu Evrope, kar nam je sporočil pred kratkim in se opravičil za odsotnost, sledi posnetek njegovega nagovora.
Drage udeleženke, spoštovani udeleženci, veliko veselje in čast mi je, da vas lahko pozdravim na prvem kongresu ekonomske demokracije v Sloveniji. Sam zelo verjamem v koncept solastništva zaposlenih, tako v podjetjih, kot verjetno celo v zavodih. Zato si res dosti obetam od razprav, ki jih boste imeli, hkrati se pa zavedam, da je to šele prvi korak. Verjamem, da bomo tudi na ta način ekonomski demokraciji našli mesto v naši državi in da bomo zaradi tega na koncu vsi boljši in na boljšem. Ustvarjali bomo višjo dodano vrednost, ustvarjali bomo lojalnost in pripadnost zaposlenih in nenazadnje večali bomo našo konkurenčno prednost v tem globalnem svetu.
K nagovoru vabim ministra za delo, družino in socialne zadeve, Luko Mesca. Izvolite.
lepo pozdravljeni in najprej se moram zahvaliti Inštitutu za ekonomsko demokracijo za organizacijo tega dogodka in za to, da vas lahko tudi kot minister, ki bo kmalu odgovoren tudi za področje ekonomske demokracije, nagovorim. Glede na to, da to prihaja v mojo domeno, bom oseben. Želim vam predstaviti, zakaj je mene prepričal koncept ekonomske demokracije in zakaj so me prepričali sodelavci Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo, da je to alternativa, ki jo iščemo za 21. stoletje. Začel bom nekoliko preko vinka. Zdaj, kriza, ki se je na Zahodu začela leta 2007 s finančnim zlomom, še zdaleč ni rešena. Čeprav jo zamegljujejo druge krize, migracijska, covid kriza, pa zdaj energetska kriza in vojna v Ukrajini, vidimo v sosednji Italiji z zmago gospe Giorgie Meloni, da praktično nagovarja iste sentimente, kot jih je pred njo nagovarjal Donald Trump, kot jih nagovarja Viktor Orban ali pa kot jih je nagovarjal bilo kateri nasprotnik demokracije na Zahodu. Njena metoda je jeza, njene obljube pa so nižji davki in višje pokojnine, recimo, v državi, ki ima že tako najdražji pokojninski sistem v Evropi. Sam nisem nikoli hotel pripadati tej kasti politikov, ki bi gradila na sentimentu jeze in ki bi obljubljala nemogoče. Prijateljica mi je pred nekimi 8 leti, približno takrat, ko sem se začel ukvarjati profesionalno s politiko, podarila magnet, ki sem ga imel na hladilniku in na katerem je pisalo Always give a little bit more than you promise. Se pravi, vedno daj malo več od tega, kar obljubiš. In tega se poskušam tudi držati, sploh zdaj, ko sem član vlade, v katero verjamem in ki mislim, da dela prave stvari v Sloveniji. Zdaj pa zakaj ekonomska demokracija? Na odgovor na to gospo Giorgio Meloni ni nek razsvetljeni liberalizem, ampak je v resnici zlitina pametne politike in ekonomije. Politika in ekonomija sta namreč veliko bolj povezani, kot si radi priznamo, in jeza, s katere se napaja Giorgia Meloni, v veliki meri izhaja iz ekonomskega položaja, v katerem se je Italija znašla, in iz občutka nemoči, ki ga italijanski državljani občutijo že vrsto let. Ne nazadnje, Italija je eno od najslabše rastočih in najbolj stagnirajočih gospodarstev v Evropi. Ekonomska demokracija je v resnici odgovor na vse skupaj. Zdaj, če gledamo z pozicije tega, kar si prizadevamo v Levici, pa pogledamo, kje ekonomska demokracija deluje najbolje, bomo videli, da v Baskiji, sploh v krajih, kjer je stacioniran Mondragon, ki je največja kooperativa na svetu, kjer so delavci lastniki, imamo najmanjšo stopnjo revščine, najmanjšo stopnjo neenakosti, najmanjšo stopnjo brezposelnosti, najmanjšo stopnjo kriminala in najvišjo stopnjo izobraženosti in vključenosti žensk. Če pogledamo z gospodarskega vidika, glede na to, da ste številni podjetniki med nami, pa bom rekel takole. Pokojni Jože Mencinger je dejal, da po krizi samoupravljanja, o kateri sam pisal kot živ pesek, v katerega se je utapljalo slovensko gospodarstvo, že 30 let iščemo odgovorne lastnike, pa jih še nismo našli. Ekonomska demokracija deluje na principu vključenosti. In ena stvar, ki sem se jo v politiki naučil, je to, da če človeka vključiš, mu zaupaš odgovornost, se bo v večini primerov tudi začel odgovorno obnašati. In danes, ko se marsikdo pritožuje nad stanjem v Sloveniji, to pritoževanje izhaja iz občutka nemoči, iz občutka nevključenosti, iz občutka, da ne v državi, ne v svoji občini, ne v podjetju ne more ničesar bistvenega spremeniti. Kot bo verjetno povedal tudi naš osrednji gost, gospod Steven Smith, pa je princip ekonomske demokracije skin in the game. Se pravi, ljudje so vključeni v lastništvo podjetij, ljudje so zato soodgovorni za podjetja, v katerih delajo, ljudje se čutijo pripadne in to jim da neko popolno drugačno razumevanje sveta okrog sebe podjetja, v katerem delajo, in to je princip, na katerem jaz upam, da želimo postaviti 21. stoletje. Mislim, da je to alternativa grozotam, ki jih vidimo po svetu, ki smo jo iskali, in tudi zato sem se odločil, da je ena od prioritet mojega mandata ekonomska demokracija, ker jo sam vidim kot pot v to, kar sem poimenoval solidarna prihodnost. Hvala lepa.
Najlepša hvala. Zdaj pa prisluhnimo posnetku soavtorja Evropskega ESOP modela in predsednika Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo, gospoda Davida Ehlermana.
Hello, I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I have a few words to say. And I've been in this business of writing about or consulting with employee-owned businesses for over 50 years now. And so I've seen a lot of different structures. And of all the structures, different types of employee ownership, the employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs, have been by far the most successful. And the statistics on this are quite striking. Of the other types of employee ownership, there are about 500, but ESOPs, they're close to 7,000 ESOPs in the United States now. And even more striking is that 10% of the private workforce now work in ESOP companies. So that means 1 out of every 10 workers works in a company where they are the part owner through an ESOP. And the United Kingdom has also implemented an ESOP type program. And the law was passed in 2014, 8 years ago, and they've already created 1,000 of firms that have converted to employee ownership using that plan. So that is the type of very successful way to implement the employee ownership. Now, when my wife and I decided to move permanently to Slovenia, we were lucky to meet 2 young, brilliant Slovenes, Tej Gonza, who you've already met, and Greg Berkowitz, who is our legal eagle. Greg, take a bow. And we worked together to figure out how to implement the ESOP structure within the body of Slovene law. And we've now done that, and we have done 4 conversions of firms using this ESOP plan, and that is a proof of concept that has been accepted by the legal authorities as a valid legal form. So those companies do not benefit yet from a law, and what is needed is a law which will give them legal certainty, which will give them tax breaks, and will also prevent any possible abuses of the legal form. So thank you. Those are the few words I wanted to say, and good luck.
Zdaj pa k besedi z velikim veseljem in spoštovanjem vabim našega osrednjega gosta, izvršnega direktorja globalnega podjetja Mestnem Industries, Stevena Smitha, ki je v svoji bogati karieri deloval tudi kot predsednik delavsko-lastniških korporacij v Ameriki, kjer si prizadevajo za razvoj prakse lastništva zaposlenih. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Dober večer, and that is all the Slovene you'll hear from me tonight. I apologize for coming to you in English. Before I start talking, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, so hopefully the technology works and you can see a quick overview of our company, Mestnem Industries.
What is the driving force that moves the world forward? An idea? A movement? a passion? At Amstead Industries, our people are that force. Our businesses are home to over 17,000 hardworking people around the world who embody a spirit of innovation and ownership for the betterment of our communities, for the future of our planet, for the value we provide our customers. Around the world every day, our people are redefining what it means to innovate, create, and own the work they do to move the world forward. Over the road, we're redefining how commercial vehicle fleets sustain their vision. Across the rails, we're leading by example, creating smart, durable solutions across freight, transit, and digital. On the drive home, we're propelling the charge to bring the electrified future to the masses. And throughout the skyline, we're reinventing cooling to sustain the world. With operations in 17 countries and over 75 facilities, we are modernizing manufacturing to do more while using less, creating sustainable solutions that help our customers achieve their goals through our success. Over a century ago, we began our journey providing engineering and manufacturing excellence. And today, we're still leading the charge in our industries. With every innovation, every industry-changing technology, every revolutionary development, our people are the driving force that moves the world forward.
So first let me say, Mr. Minister of Labor, Mr. Minister of Finance, Tay, and the entire team at IAD, it's an honor to be here and be able to talk to you about one example where an ESOP has worked very effectively in the United States. I've had an honor of being part of the leadership at Amstead Industries for 17 years. I've been the CEO for nearly the last 6. And I also spent 4 years as the chairman of the Employee-Owned S Corporations of America, ESCA, which was an organization that lobbied on behalf of numerous ESOPs throughout the United States to make sure that our government was always aware of what a great thing they had created when they created the structure back in the 1970s, and that it remains strong today. So I've had contact with lots of very successful ESOPs. It is a model that has truly worked. We've been owned by we date back to 1902, as I'll tell you shortly, but we've been owned 2/3 by our employees since 1986, and we've been owned 100% by our employees since 1998. So I think we've demonstrated that the ESOP model is a sustainable model that can withstand the test of time and can work even in a complicated, diversified business like ours. However, I'm not here to present it as a definitive model. As many ESOPs as there are in the United States, there are uniquenesses about each one. And here in Slovenia and perhaps the rest of Europe, you'll have the opportunity to adapt to a model that works best for your companies as well, and hopefully gives them the flexibility to be able to find their own pattern as well. But I'm here this evening to say basically that in one situation, employee ownership has worked, and it's worked because it's created a culture in which we believe we have a competitive advantage. We have employees who act like they own the business, as we always say, because in fact they do own the business. And it flows through to our customers. Our customers recognize that they're dealing with someone not just doing a job, but someone who really cares about the end result, because they're going to benefit personally from the success of the company as well. There's something called the Great Resignation that you've probably heard about in this part of the world as well, and certainly it's been a process in the United States too. I'm proud to say that just before COVID, we started a program with 50 of our top people across the world coming in every quarter to Chicago for education in what we call the Amstead Way. It's been in finance and labor and sustainability and all issues along that, and leadership. Of those 50 top people, we didn't lose any during this 3-year period because they're committed to the company and they have a sense of ownership. So quickly, you saw the video. We date from 1902. You see the numbers up there. We've already heard some of them, about 17,000 employees around the world, 66 plants around the world. And you saw our businesses too very quickly, basically 4 business groups. When you see a freight car, rail freight car in the United States, the entire undercarriage is usually ours. When you see a big heavy-duty commercial vehicle on the highways pulling goods, the hubs on the front axle and the inside interior plastic sleeper units and dashboards are likely ours. Many automobiles of all makers have our materials and our components and their clutch systems. And then Baltimore Aircoil is a leader in construction, specifically in evaporative cooling around the world. And yes, I checked, there are some Baltimore Aircoil installations in Slovenia as well. So here's a little history. Again, we date back to 1902. We were a publicly traded company. In 1986, Amstead was taken private as one of the earliest ESOPs. 2/3 was sold to our employees. And we became a 100% owned ESOP as a subchapter S corporation. Not to get too technical, but that's a flow-through entity that can have only 100 employees, only 100 shareholders. We have only one shareholder, namely the ESOP. And the law was changed to enable ESOPs, those flow-through entities, to be owned by an ESOP, and that's been that's really encouraged and urged the prevalence of ESOPs throughout the United States. Our model of being formed is not the most typical. What we see a lot of ESOPs being formed in the US now is where there's been family-owned businesses or closely held private businesses over a period of time. There's a lot of baby boomers like me. The next generation doesn't really want to take over those babies, those companies, and as a result, the ownership looks to sell to an ESOP. And there are tax incentives to do that. Capital gain tax can be deferred if you do that. And then also that structure of an ESOP has certain tax advantages going forward as well. You know, it's one thing to give your employees a share of the capital every year. And what we do is each year we give our employees 5 to 10% additional to their compensation in the form of our shares. It goes into their accounts. But what really drives the value of an ESOP is being a successful company on top of that. So our share price has risen over the years, as you can see by the chart on the left. And that is what has really enabled our employees to build wealth and secure retirements. And as a result, they are very invested in the company. And as I said, it affects our culture. And it's a very populist program, really. The top shareholder owns only 0.5% of the total shares. So ownership is really widely and broadly dispersed throughout the 9,000 participants in the ESOP. Top 5% of shares are held by 400 shareholders, so it's not concentrated wealth. Now, unlike you may be doing in this country, it is a retirement plan in the United States. And so one of the patterns of ownership is that people develop more ownership over time, but then under the law in the United States, at the age of 55, they have to be given the chance to diversify. At the age of 60, diversify another 25%, they're up to 50%. And so then the share that they own in those age categories begins to decrease over time. Many Americans have no private retirement plan. 50%, in fact, of employees don't have any private retirement plan. This is a very secure one for our people. And because they have that retirement wealth, it gives them the ability to live productive and healthy and lives of dignity during their working careers as well. What makes it sustainable from my standpoint? What has made it sustainable? You know, you have to run a good business to run a good ESOP too. And I think we've had market-leading businesses. We have a decentralized structure, so we avoid bureaucracy. We push responsibility down. We emphasize cash generation. It's very important because every quarter we pay out tens of millions of dollars to our employees who are now benefiting from their ownership share every quarter. Certain qualified ones have the right to put their shares to the company. And so we have to manage cash so that we can always honor that. I feel very good every quarter when we're doing exactly what the ESOP was designed to do. We're passing out money to our employees who have worked hard to earn it. We have high return thresholds for capital investment, and we emphasize organic growth. We only do small acquisitions. We don't want to do bet the company kinds of acquisitions because we have a trust to our employees, so we're very careful in that regard. We have a relentless focus on making sure we can meet that repurchase obligation, and we always make sure we maintain ample liquidity so we can honor it. And then a culture of ownership and innovation. We want our people to know that their creative ideas will contribute to the success of the company. And, you know, that does a couple things. You know, it makes them realize that the ESOP is not just a financial structure, it's an attitude in how we run the company too, that they have a say in what we do. I won't spend a lot of time on structure, but there is a little circularity to it. As you would note by this, there is an ESOP trustee, which is an independent outside organization that is the trustee of the trust that holds all the shares for the employees. The ESOP trustee votes the shares for the board of directors every year, and then the board appoints the executive team, and then the executive team obviously hires the employees. However, every year at the time directors are to be elected, and Amsted's a little unique in this, a lot of ESOPs don't do this, our ESOP participants give directions to the ESOP trustee whether or not all the directors ought to be supported or not. They can vote on each one. And so every year, my position is up for a vote of my employees, which keeps me honest, I guess, right? I'm glad to say we were 98% this last year, but that's because we built a culture of success around the company. The other thing that's unique about Amsted is that our board is all independent directors, not management, other than me. I'm the only member of management on the board. We think that gives us an element of accountability, which makes us perform to a very high standard. Again, I don't want to get too technical here, but you know, this is a common pattern of how an ESOP is set up in the United States. There are lending institutions that lend to ESOPs or to ESOP companies. At various times, there have been tax incentives for them to do that, forgiveness of income tax on certain of the income that comes in. That loan is often made to the company that then does a mirror loan to the employee stock ownership trust. That trust then buys the company, or at least a portion of it, from the previous owners of the company. Often that loan is not enough to cover the whole purchase price, and the sellers will also take back a note, so they're bearing some of the debt of the company going forward too. And then with time, as the company generates cash flow, they contribute the cash into the employee stock ownership trust. Shares get released into the accounts of the ESOP participants, and the seller's note gets paid off over time, and the bank loan gets paid off over time. And we've, since 2004, have been in the status of the chart on the right, where at that point there's no longer any leverage in the ESOP. We do borrow as a company still some to increase our growth opportunities, but it's not through the ESOP, it's just direct borrowings ourselves. There are some challenges, particularly to being a global ESOP. Most countries do not have tax laws that accommodate annual grants, so we have found it difficult to share with some of our employees as we have grown globally that they can participate directly. Nevertheless, I was talking to some earlier today, we feel our culture does permeate the entire company, and we do use something called stock appreciation rights to compensate employees abroad based on share performance. So it's the leadership only we do that for right now. It's the only level at which it's economic outside of the United States. But I'm glad to see countries like Slovenia thinking about ways to also make it possible for us to share more broadly with our international employees as well. I think I really covered most of these as we talked about sustainability. I will say we maintain sophisticated models at all time on cash flow and results so that we can be sure we can always fulfill our commitment to the ESOP employees and to the participants. I mentioned the employee-owned S Corporations of America, a group of private ESOPs that advocates for ESOPs in Washington. I'm proud to say, you know, there aren't, as I'm sure you're aware, in the United States, there aren't many issues that are bipartisan, but ESOPs are one where we have strong support on both sides of the aisle. Democrats and Republicans both are strong supporters. We stay in close contact with the tax writing committees in particular, both in the House and the Senate. And you know, our mission is to make sure, and we never feel any direct threats, but as you can imagine, there's always tax legislation being considered, and our only risk is being an inadvertent risk of something that's done that people don't realize the impact it might have on an ESOP. And for example, there is a very small 1% share repurchase tax that was being contemplated this year at the congressional level. We were able to make sure that ESOPs would be excluded from any effect of that as well. We also do studies in this organization to show that there truly are, that these are truly effective vehicles. For example, a few of them noted there, 46% of millennial employees at ESOPs have net worth of $50,000 or more versus 15% of non-ESOPs. And 91% of workers at ESOPs feel they can retire comfortably versus 49% of non-ESOPs. So again, that's part of a feature of us being a retirement-based program, but once you have that retirement security, obviously it changes a little bit how you live your life day to day before then as well. Again, I won't elaborate on this too much, but the C corporations are generally publicly traded entities that then have an ESOP that is a minority interest usually, and it does give the employees some tie to the company's success and can be effective. The S corporations are pass-through entities, as we say, so tax is paid only at the shareholder level, and the ESOP participants, when they withdraw their cash for their shares, they can be taxed on that. However, there are deferral mechanisms then even where they can put that cash into other retirement accounts. Ultimately, though, then the tax is paid by the participant many years perhaps after that they've been granted those shares. And just speaking on a societal level briefly here, without getting too much macro level on this, you know, there's a lot of talk in our country, as I'm sure perhaps elsewhere in Europe, that there's been a lot increase in wealth inequality and income inequality. And Jared Bernstein, who is on President Biden's chief economic council, has studied ESOPs. He was skeptical at first. I remember meeting with him back in 2015 and 2016, and he was skeptical at first about whether it really worked. But he's done studies that analyze both. He studied both wealth inequality and income inequality, and he came away a believer and convinced that indeed the results with ESOP show that there is less wage inequality between the top and the bottom earners in an ESOP company, and also that there is less wealth inequality as well too. Some of you are aware of Thomas Piketty, the French economist who has made the point that the holders of capital are benefiting much more than the holders of labor these days, or the providers of labor. You know, this is a model that lets your workers benefit both from the fruits of their labor, but also from the fruits of the capital as well. And I think that's why it's so powerful. I'm not saying this is the answer to all our societal issues, clearly not, but I think it can be a nice piece of the puzzle among many alternatives. And that's what we found it to be in the United States. So final thoughts. I think I've said most of these things, but the power of employee ownership has been proven over time. People behave differently when they have skin in the game. One of my colleagues always says, do you ever take a rental car to be washed? No, but do you take a car you own to be washed? Yes, you do. And structures that promote employee participation can be important, but it's also how you run the organization. And we think a culture of flat organizations that not only makes the employees technical owners, but treats them like owners is important as well. And that's possible, that culture is possible even where you have 17,000 employees around the world. I firmly believe that. Senior managers, we are organized as a trust in the United States. It's an ESOP trust, and that's a legal format, but it's also a spiritual format in a way. I mean, as managers, you feel you have a duty of trust to your employees, and it affects how you manage the company. You don't do things for the CEO's ego. You do things that are going to make the person that you've worked with sitting outside your desk for years have a very successful retirement and not endanger that. So I do think it makes you better managers in many ways. You still need strategic success, and I'll say if there's one downside, some of our businesses sometimes think we could grow faster. If we could access the public markets, we could do even more. Some of that growth doesn't turn out too well anyway, so it can be a little bit of a governor. I think it keeps you prudent as a company sometimes. But if there are companies that have extreme capital needs and need to do things like tap the public markets, then maybe the ESOP's not the right format for them. But that's not most companies. That's a small number of companies out there. And the other thing I'll say is, could we someday, I'd like you to have a Euro-wide ESOP, but could we have a worldwide ESOP someday where because even if you put a program in place here, it still will be difficult for us to give shares. That will not enable us to give shares to a U.S. company to employees elsewhere in the world. So someday it would be nice, just like we have tax treaties right now among countries, couldn't we have ESOP treaties that would enable truly global ESOPs as well? Maybe that's a dream, but you have to think big sometimes. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all.
Najlepša hvala. Za vsa vprašanja bo seveda gospod Smith na voljo po uradnem delu kongresa, tako da svetujem, da izkoristite priložnost. Našemu vabilu, da z glasbo obogati nocojšnji dogodek, se je odzval eden od pionirjev slovenskega repa in funka, Recycleman. Sledi komad Cekini padajo z neba, pri čemer prosim, da naslov razumemo zgolj kot poetično figuro ali pa morda metaforično napoved, če uspemo s širjenjem ekonomske demokracije v Sloveniji. Torej, Recycleman in Cekini padajo z neba.
Cekini padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Kadar padajo na tla, ne pustijo se pobrati in na marmorju velem se orobajo dobrat. Radi imajo banke, žepe in blagajne, radi imajo shopping in nažalost vojno stanje marsikje ležijo v globinah morja. Nekoč zapustili so pirata gusarja in zlani so bili že od zdavnej prej. Potovali so daleč preko antičnih mej, imel jih je kralj, Cezar in Berač, imajo jih Bolgari in tudi potapljač. Majh stevardesa, ko na fura drobiš, več ko jih imaš, bolj dušen je biš. Cekini padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Cekini padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Tu če si Einstein, se ne morajo reinkarnirat, in dosti ti pomagajo, če je treba parkirat. Dan, dober dan, nam jih kdo razloži, razloži na 1, 2 in ja, 3. Kaj je to, kaj je to, kaj je to, denar je dražji kot je vreden, jo, kaj je to, kaj je to, kaj je to. Oj, 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 oj. Čekiri parajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Čekiri padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Radi žvenketajo in se skrivajo predale, sam neopralni stroj, če res nočeš meštale. Poznajo jih eskimi in aboričini, v formi so pomladi, poletje sem po zimi. Imen imajo preveč, tejo okrogli denarci, zloti džeparci, rupije kovanci. Zvok imajo heavy, if you know what I mean. Čin, čin, kačin, je zvok od kovin. Cvekiri parajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Cvekiri padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Aha, aha, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Čekiri padajo z neba, sred neba je pa zemljica, leteli bi tudi v nebo, pa imajo radi gravitacijo. Radio Študent streaming live, yes, yes, yo, what's up party people, everybody, welcome to Kongres. See you later.
Recycleman med drugim v svojem komadu pravi, a mi kdo razloži, razloži na 1, 2, 3. In ker verjamemo v pomembnost z izkušnjami podkrepljenih razlag, sledi prvi panel o lastništvu zaposlenih, ki ga bo moderiral direktor Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo, Gonza. Izvolite, beseda je vaša. Mikrofon in seveda od vseh gostov. Jih boš povabil ti, jih povabim jaz, jih povabiva skupaj.
Prosim, evo. Gostje se lahko kar pridružite, pa vas bom tukaj predstavil, po mojem vsi veste, kdo ste. Ali čakate, da predstavim in da greste en pa po en gor, lahko tudi tako naredimo. Kar prosto se usedite. Tako, Tokrat v sedečem formatu moram reči, da je veliko bolj udobno. Z nami so direktorji 3 podjetij, ki jih povezuje družbeno odgovorna vizija lastništva zaposlenih. Najprej bom zelo na kratko predstavil vse izmed njih, potem pa gremo kar na vprašanja. Imamo pol urce na primer za pogovor, tako da 2 vprašanja, vsako vprašanje 5 minut, bolj ali manj, potem bomo na koncu še 2-3 vprašanja sprejeli iz publike. Tako, kot prvega predstavljam gospoda Petra Kosina, direktorja podjetja Ineja, ki je bila ena izmed prvih podjetij d.o.o. v Sloveniji v 90-ih, drugače je spin-off iz Inštituta Jožeta Štefana. Ineja ima v sami ustavi napisano, da je podjetje v notranji lasti. Danes zaposluje okrog 90, malo manj kot 90 delavcev in je na poti, ji pomagamo na poti, da pride do 100% lastništvo ESOP sklada. Torej, verjetno eno izmed prvih podjetij, ki bo 100% lastništvo ESOP sklada, oziroma vsaj največje. Gospod Kosin pričakuje, da bo s tem postala bolj odporna, uspešna in da bo poslovanje usmerjeno v zasledovanje interesov vseh zaposlenih. Drugi gost je gospod dr. Jure Knez, vrhunski podjetnik, direktor enega izmed bolj prodornih inovativnih slovenskih podjetij d.o.o. Za zanimivost, d.o.o. je trenutno na projektu Artemis, to mi je bila ena stvar, ki mi je bila izredno zanimiva, ki je nasin projekt, ki bo do leta 2026 drugič v zgodovini na Luno odpeljal človeško posadko, tako da kar zanimivo. Si zasluži aplavz, definitivno. d.o.o. danes doma in tujini zaposluje okrog 250 delavcev, več kot 250 delavcev. Gospod Knez poudarja, da so notranji lastniki bolj potrpežljivi, družbeno odgovorni in več vračajo lokalni skupnosti. In še tretji gost panela, gospod Matjaž Čemažar, lep pozdrav, sem rekel gost domela, direktor panela, domel, institucija delavskega lastništva v Sloveniji, vsekakor največje podjetje, trenutno imajo okrog 1400 zaposlenih, približno. Sredi 90-ih zgodba domela je taka, da je prišla v last zaposlenih na način, da so se zavarovali pred sovražnim prevzemom, oziroma ni se točno vedela, je sovražni ali ne. Ameriški konkurent jih je hotel kupiti, delavci so se organizirali, zbrali kapital in odkupili s pomočjo tudi nekih drugih podjetij to podjetje. Gospod Čemažar pogosto iz prve roke lahko potrdi seveda, da so delavci kot solastniki bolj pripadni, bolj racionalno gledajo na dolgoročni razvoj podjetja. Tako, mislim, da je panel res bogato goščen. Prvo vprašanje bi dal kar gospodu Kosinu. INEA se sooča s klasičnim izzivom lastniškega nasledstva, ki ne samo v podjetjih v notranjem lastništvu, ampak tudi v drugih podjetjih v Sloveniji, predvsem v sektorju malih in srednjih podjetij, bo predstavljal velik izziv. Mi smo se v zgodbo INEA vključili okrog kakšna 3 leta nazaj. Predlagali smo, da problem lastniškega nasledstva rešite s slovenskim ESOP modelom. Zdaj me zanima, kakšen je bil ta izziv takrat in kako so se angažirani zaposleni. To je prvi del vprašanja, se mi zdi zelo zanimiva zgodba. Drugi del pa se nanaša na trenutne težave. Vi ste zadnja 3 leta prejemnik pletineste odličnosti, letos imate ogromno projektov podpisanih, imate pa težavo s pridobivanjem obratnega kapitala, ker ste odkup financirali z lastnimi sredstvi. Zdaj me zanima, kje je težava in kako bi lahko tukaj država pomagala, na primer.
Hvala. Hvala za vabilo, hvala za besedo. Zgodba INEA se je začela 30 plus let nazaj in je nastala kot podjetje v lasti zaposlenih. Tako da vsi, ki smo vstopali v to družbo, smo imeli tudi to pričakovanje in to odgovornost in to skrb, da podjetje deluje z zaposlenimi, za zaposlene in da zaposleni zato tudi skrbijo za podjetje. Nastavljen je bil tudi model, kako se prehaja med generacijami, ki pa se je po 30 letih izkazal, da ne deluje. Izkazalo se je, da mladi nismo več tako mladi in da smo imeli v lasti manj kot 10% kapitala. Kljub temu, da smo odkupovali vse deleže, ki so bili kadarkoli po modelu na prodaj. Tukaj je potem nastal izziv, seveda, ker če gojiš neko pričakovanje, ki se potem ne izkaže za resnično, potem moraš poiskati neko rešitev. In temu smo tudi vsaj navidezno konstruktivno vsi pristopili. Preigravali smo razne modele in eden od lastnikov je tudi poznal ESOP in ga predlagal kot eno možno rešitev ali delno rešitev. Takrat smo se pogovarjali o delni rešitvi, da bi počasi ESOP uvajali, ker ga seveda nihče ga ne pozna in to je tudi še vedno težava v Sloveniji, s komerkoli se pogovarjaš, da kaj potrebuješ od njega, pa govoriš o ESOP-u, kaj pa je zdaj to, kako pa to zgleda, kaj to pomeni, so precej zadržani. Ampak nekako je zgledalo, da se da dobiti dosti širok konsenz. Nekateri so seveda takoj začeli z samoupravljanjem, čeprav to nima nobene zveze. No, v vsakem primeru izgledalo je, kot da bo možno dobiti konsenz. Tukaj je tudi Inštitut potem vstopil, smo jih ravno v pravem času so se ustanovili, da so lahko že pomagali z vsebinami, z izobraževanjem, nam pomagali razumeti, kako to funkcionira. No, potem smo pa prišli do točke, ko je bilo treba nekaj narediti. Pogovarjali smo se dolgo časa, prišlo je do nekega sporazuma, kako bi izvedli generacijski prehod, potem pa so nekateri umaknili to podporo in se je začela ena faza, zelo neprijetna, zelo težka.
Nekateri družbeniki,
tako, ki so dali vpogled, zakaj 70% podjetij, MSP-jev ob generacijskem prehodu ne preživi. Prišli so na vrh osebni interesi, ki so se pač s 30 leti spremenili. Ko si blizu točke, ko ne boš več produktivno ustvarjal in ne boš več dobival sadov svojega dela skupaj s kapitalskimi, potem nekateri začnejo razmišljati drugače. Tako da je prišlo do zelo resnega spora, kjer je Ineja visela na nitki dolgo časa. Dogajalo se razne stvari, podrobnosti ne bi tukaj načenjali, niso pomembni, samo se mi zdi pomembno, da veste, kar se jaz nisem zavedal, ker tega nisem študiral vse zase in misliš, da če dobro delaš, če je dobiček, če rastemo, da je vse v redu, da si kot poslovodstvo odličen in da so ljudje motivirani, ti zaupajo in da to je vse, kar podjetje potrebuje. No, spor so pa rešili zaposleni. Zaposleni so se sami aktivirali in so pridobili informacije z obeh strani. Mogoče moram še to reči, da niso vsi družbeniki, sploh ne. Nekako se je na koncu scimlo, da je polovica zelo podpirala generacijski prehod, približno polovica pa ne. No, zaposleni so se potem sami organizirali in so se lotili pridobivanja informacij tako od vodstva, tako od enih družbenikov, tako od drugih družbenikov in so se prebili čez meglo, ki je nastala, ker seveda nihče noče izpasti slab. Se pravi, če nekaj dela v svojem izključnem interesu, mora nekako narediti zgodbo, da drugi verjamejo, da je to za njih dobro. In čez take zgodbe je treba pač se prebiti, da prideš do resnice. In to so tudi storili in so se pri tem izpostavili osebno, so naredili razne akcije, potem ko so ugotovili, kaj je res in kdo si želi dolgoročni razvoj podjetja, kdo gleda 30 let naprej, kdo pa pravzaprav bi želel samo svoj interes uveljaviti v tem trenutku. Na koncu so stavkali, so postavili zahteve, da se vodstvo ne zamenja in so pri tem vztrajali. So naredili tudi kakšen špalir pred skupščino in tako naprej. Tako da res so se izpostavili, a ne so tvegali tudi, da bodo izgubili službe, ker seveda, če bi bilo vodstvo zamenjano, potem tisti nelojalni bi pač bili na tnalu. Ampak jaz sem prepričan, da ker so živeli v duhu, tudi pa večina zaposlenih, kot sem prej rekel, ni imela deležev, ampak so vseeno živeli v duhu, da bodo, da to je urejeno, ali pa potem, ko so videli, da ni, da bo. Tako da so se angažirali za to, ker so verjeli, da je to njihovo podjetje, da so oni del tega in da ne more eden ali neki posameznikov samo zato, ker so lastniki kapitala, vse postaviti na glavo v smislu, da podjetje izgubi zmožnost delovanja.
Zakaj pa še vedno niste ESOP?
Zakaj še nismo ESOP? Zato, ker proces traja. Namigujem na finančno situacijo, ne vem. Končna rešitev je bil dogovor o izplačilu družbenikov, teh, ki so bili že vsi v bistvu upokojeni ali pa že itak prej zapustili podjetje, iz lastnih sredstev podjetja. Vsiljena je bila tudi takrat ena oblika preko tako imenovanega vozila. Se pravi, ustanovila se je druga družba, ki je odkupila, pa to se je izkazalo, da ni v redu, da zelo zakomplicira proces prehoda na ESOP. Tako da to se zdaj še rešuje. Seveda, tukaj so imeli malo prav, tisti, ki so rekli, nočemo biti prvi. Ko si prvi, potem moraš šele iskati rešitve, ko prideš do izziva. Da najdeš prave ljudi, ki se res poznajo pravno, ki se spoznajo davčno, ki se spoznajo finančno, je nekaj časa trajalo, tudi da oni rešitev si pridobijo, jo postavijo in potem, da to spelješ po vseh zakonskih zahtevah, pač zahteva svoj čas. Potem so razni deležniki od FURS-a do IPES-a, do sodišča, ki vsi imajo svoje predpise in zahtevajo čas, ampak zdaj mislim, da smo vse izzive rešili in da je samo še tehnična izvedba.
Bo INEA do konca leta 100% ESOP?
Bo. Sicer sem optimist vedno, mogoče malo preveč, ampak bo.
Čudovito, najlepša hvala. Gospod Knez, jaz sem bil pa z vami v Devesoft oziroma z drugim soustanoviteljem, gospodom Oroženom, še pred INEO, 4 leta nazaj in takrat mi je gospod Orožen, ki ga danes nažalost ni z nami, rekel takole, rekel je, 1 leto ste prepozni. S tem je mislil povedati, da ste vi 1 leto prej že vzpostavili nek svoj sistem, ki je v bistvu sistem direktnega družbeništva. Ta model direktnega družbeništva se razlikuje od ESOP modela po tem, da ESOP model se gre za lastništvo preko sklada, preko special purpose vehicle in modela nista, mislim, tukaj bi vprašal vas, midva imava to debato že kar nekaj časa. Kako se primerjata ta dva modela, kaj so prednosti enega in drugega in a sta izključujoča ali se dopolnjujeta na nek način?
To je kar po pravici povedati, Andrej takrat ven vrgel z sporočila, mi imamo boljš.
Jaz se nisem tako interpretiral.
Vse se hecam. Ne, mi direktni sistem solastništva, to igro se gremo že kakih 7 let in vsak tak sistem je dober, dokler je vse v redu, dokler podjetje raste, preizkusi se pa šele takrat, ko je kriza. In pri nas, ko je prišel COVID, ko smo videli, da se naročila manjšajo, da se podjetja zapirajo svoja vrata, smo nekako razvojnike smo poslali domov, da delajo doma, v proizvodnji pa to ni bilo možno in jaz sem vprašal, kaj bomo sedaj, če se kdo ne počuti varnega, dobili smo maske od naših Kitajcev in sem dobil odgovor, sem vprašal, če kdo se ne počuti varnega, lahko ostane doma in sem dobil odgovor, Jure, imaš ti COVID? Se hecaš, mi imamo naročila, mi moramo delati, mi moramo strankam zagotavljati opremo, da bojo lahko normalno naprej delali in tu se mi zdi, da je bila ena taka res lepa stvar. In jaz sem resnično vesel, da imamo sistem solastništva in v bistvu sedaj nekako preizkušamo, zmeraj mi se ukvarjamo z eksperimenti in tam zadaj je Anže, ki vodi katapult metal, Anže del stand, da ljudje vidijo, in v bistvu na primeru katapult metala nekako uveljavljamo ESOP, ne vem, če bo do konca leta, tudi upamo, da enostavno preizkusimo oba sistema, tako da smo imeli že kar nekaj izobraževanj na to temo. Zdaj iz prakse lahko povem samo o sistemu solastništva, direktnem sistemu solastništva zaposlenih. Ta sistem ESOP je nekako, se mi zdi, bolj rigiden, bolj stabilen, tako da se mi zdi iz tega, da ne velja, da bi one fits all, da je potrebno imeti kombinacijo, različna podjetja so v različnih fazah razvoja in nekako zahtevajo tudi različne pristope. ESOP se mi zdi, da je odličen za takšne primere, kot je recimo INEA, za primere, ko želi ustanovitelj, nekako nima družinskega nasledstva, ko želi to pa vseeno predati in ne želi prodati nekemu finančnemu lastniku. Direktno solastništvo je primerno za startupe, je bolj likvidno, je bolj dinamično, tudi v času krize je bolj, tako bi rekel, labilno lahko, odvisno od valuacije, tako da je pri teh modelih treba biti izredno previden. Potrebno je urediti sistem obdavčitve opcij, da lahko resnično nagradiš dober kader, tiste, ki podjetja nekako rinejo naprej. Slišali smo na primeru Amstela, da imajo poleg sistema ESOP-a za vodstveni kader, za najboljše inženirje, da imajo tako imenovane fantomske delnice. Tako da se mi zdi kombinacija vsega, do tega recimo, da bi lahko sodelavce, ki niso lastniki, bili udeleženi pri dobičku, o čemer smo se že tudi pogovarjali, pa ni bilo sprejeto. Tako da se mi zdi, da vse te stvari tvorijo mozaik sistema solastništva, ki je osnova za to, da lahko Slovenija prosperira. Moram pa reči, čeprav mi je res žal, da moramo skrbeti to, da bo sistem stabilen. Recimo v novem svežnju paketov dohodnine, in tak čist mečken stavek se zdi nepomemben, da v primeru prodaje lastnika v lastne deleže, da je ta lastnik obdavčen kot dividenda. To pomeni, če jaz prodam svoj delež zdaj neki tuji korporaciji, bom kot dolgoletni lastnik ne bom plačal nič davka, če pa prodam delež v sistem v solastništvo kot lastni delež, ker to je orodje pri nas, iz katerega se prodajajo in kupujejo delnice oziroma deleži, pa bom ponovno obdavčen kot dividenda 25%. In to je pri nas sprožilo en plaz prodaj, in tukaj jaz upam, da bomo našli rešitev, kako nekako ta sistem solastništva ohraniti. Tako da se mi zdi, da je res zelo pomembno, da se resnično, tako kot smo govorili, ustanovi delovna skupina, ki bo govorila o teh spremembah in da bomo prišli v parih letih do modela, ki bo resnično omogočal sistem solastništva, ker iz naših izkušenj resnično deluje. Jaz globoko verjamem, da nikoli ne bi imeli take rasti, če sistema solastništva ne bi bilo.
Hvala lepa. Ja, tukaj se strinjamo tudi na inštitutu, da je mozaik modelov, ki spodbujajo solastništvo, ta prava pot naprej. ESOP je samo en izmed modelov znotraj tega mozaika, tako da to se strinjam. Gospod Čemažar, zgodba Domela je res dober primer, kako je lahko tudi industrijsko podjetje v lasti zaposlenih izredno inovativno. Nedavno ste prejeli zlato nacionalno priznanje za najboljšo inovacijo, čestitke na tem. Ampak ste pa tudi družbeno odgovorni kot podjetje. Naprimer, varnost zaposlitve je v Domelu ena izmed prioritet poslovanja, hkrati pa skrbite za lokalno skupnost. Pred kratkim sem prebral, da so železniki bili izbrani za občino z najvišjo kvaliteto življenja. Pa me zanima, v železnikih mislim, da sta glavna delodajalca Domel pa Alples, ki sta oba dva v lasti zaposlenih. Je to naključje? In drugo vprašanje oziroma povezano vprašanje, kako vaša lastniška struktura, kaj vi mislite, kako vaša lastniška struktura vpliva na poslanstvo podjetja, na skrb za zaposlene in družbeno odgovornost?
Ja, bom začel kar s poslanstvom. V bistvu mi imamo v poslanstvu napisan zelo jasen, da gradimo kvalitetna delovna mesta. Sej to ni samo v železnikih, zdaj smo že na 4 lokacijah, tako da smo se tudi v Škofjo Loko, to je 15 km stran.
Zračne razdalje.
Zračne razdalje.
60.
Ja, se v bistvu seveda zavedamo, da smo daleč največji zaposlovalec v občini Železniki, se pravi s 1400 delovnimi mesti v Sloveniji, skupaj pa skupina zdaj že čez 1500, se pravi imamo še na Kitajskem in pa v Srbiji podjetje. In v občini z, mislim, da 7000 prebivalcev si lahko zamislite, kaj pomeni biti delodajalec s 1400 delovnimi mesti. Ja, tega se zelo zavedamo tudi kot neke vrste dodatno breme. Praktično si ne upamo, ne znamo, pa si tudi nočemo predstavljati, da bi s poslovanjem ogrozili življenje pa prosperiteto železnikov ali pa občine Železniki. Mislim, da je bilo nekaj let nazaj, ki je bila občina Železniki res na vrhu. Takrat je v bistvu mene, takrat sem bil še kot direktor razvoja, me je zmotil samo en podatek. V bistvu po povprečni plači pa nismo bili tako visok. In ta povezava z kvalitetna delovna mesta pa povprečna plača, ki je bila relativno nizka pri nas, mi nekako ni dala miru. Tudi zato v naši strateškem dokumentu smo res postavili to rast dodane vrednosti kot nek ključni fokus, katerega zasledujemo. Vsi vemo, pač dodana vrednost je poleg dobička tudi tisto, kar zaposlene zanima, se pravi dobiček zanima lastnike seveda, pa dobiček rabimo za razvoj, za inovacije, zaposlene pa zanima tudi tisti del, kjer so plače. Tako da v bistvu, bom rekel, skoraj bolj sem bil lansko leto ponosen, ko smo, ko je bila povprečna plača v Domelu skoraj 100 evrov višja kot povprečna plača občine Železniki. To pomeni, da smo kar dobro pomaknili tudi tisti, med slabšimi kazalci naprej. Tako da to je sigurno tudi še naš cilj za naprej. Zdaj naša lastniška struktura se spreminja. Imamo 630 lastnikov.
To je naslednje vprašanje.
Da ne bom prehitel. Bom samo toliko navezal. Se pravi, še zmeraj imamo 47% kapitala v lasti zaposlenih. Res pa je, da je to v bistvu 320 zaposlenih, se pravi dobra četrtina. In to je v bistvu za nas en izziv, mogoče nismo tako na udaru ob tej trenutni zakonski napovedani spremembi. Kljub vsemu pa mislim, da tudi v nadaljevanju se bova z Juretom še navezala na to temo, se pravi tukaj res moramo držati nek sistem, ki bo omogočal takim podjetjem, kot smo mi, ki nismo edini, da vzdržujemo to udeležbo zaposlenih v lastništvu in pa na srednji ali pa dolgi rok razmišljamo o vzpostavitvi takega ESOP modela. In to mi je bilo zelo v veselje, pa včasih, da smo spoznali Amstel, kar nekaj skupnih točk sem jaz na prvo žogo videl, od tega poudarka inovativnosti, trajnosti, se pravi, mi imamo v bistvu naš slogan Sustainable Innovation in to je tisto, kar v bistvu tudi na dolgi rok verjamemo, da je naša garancija za uspešnost.
Hvala. Tukaj bi upozoril, da pogosto se v teh poslanstvih, ki so pozitivne za družbo in okolje, podjetja v lasti zaposlenih dopolnjujejo in imajo zelo podobne zgodbe in zelo podobno vizijo poslovanja. Tako da z tega vidika se splača včasih razmišljati izven Slovenije in razmišljati o povezovanju takih podjetij v neke grozde, v neke networke in mislim, da malo tudi v to smer bomo šli na naslednjem panelu, ko bomo mednarodne goste gostili in spraševali glede tega. Še ena runda vprašanj, bullet vprašanj, malo hitreje bomo odgovarjali. Gospod Kostin, mi smo, kot sem rekel, 3 leta smo z vami že na tak ali drugačen način. V zadnjem letu smo pa za vas izvedli tudi serijo teh uvodnih izobraževanj, torej identifikacija razvojnih potreb za vzpostavitev lastniške kulture in cikl predavanj z področja finančne pismenosti, kulture lastništva in vodenje po principu odprtih knjig. To je nek nabor začetnih izobraževanj. Zdaj me pa zanima, kako vi kot direktor vidite, kako taka izobraževanje in tako znanje, kaj prinese podjetju, kaj prinese kulturi v podjetju, kaj prinese zaposlenim in kaj si želite, kakšno spremembo oziroma kakšno smer si želite, da vidite v podjetju glede tega.
Kot ste rekel, smo šele na začetku. Dejstvo je, da mi smo visokotehnološko podjetje, kjer so zaposleni pravzaprav edini vir vsega. In zdaj, če zaposleni pričakujejo od podjetja odlične stvari, potem mora biti podjetje odlično in če hočemo, da je podjetje odlično, morajo tudi zaposleni odlično skrbeti za podjetje. To pa pomeni, da morajo razumeti vse procese, vsaj do neke mere, kako potekajo, zakaj je kaj, a ne, drugače se zelo hitro lahko spet ogradiš pa rečeš, jaz delam samo to in me ona druga stvar ne zanima. Tako da ob tem pa seveda dobiš tudi vključenost, ker razumeš, zakaj moraš poročilo pisati direktorju, recimo. Inženirji pač ne marajo pisati poročil, to je...
In se udeleževati sestankov, verjetno.
Absolutno.
Ok, bolje odgovori, tako bomo rekli. Gospod Knez, vem, da se vam mudi, tako da v bistvu kratko vprašanje. Prej ste omenili katapult, ki zdaj z našo pomočjo tudi prehaja v ESOP lastniško strukturo. Zanimivo mi je bila tukaj povezava katapulta in tega grozda, ki ga vidite okrog katapulta, ekosistema, ki se bo gradil in prehajal v last zaposlenih. Torej katapult je neke vrste pospeševalnik, ki ponuja neke podporne storitve in ideja je, da ko vsaka podporna storitev oziroma department pride do nekega prihodka, da gre na svoje in preide v last zaposlenih, delno last zaposlenih. In me to zelo spominja na Mondragonov ekosistem, o katerem bomo mogoče malo več slišali z profesorja Freundlicha, ki je z Mondragona, tako da je škoda, da morate iti. Me zanima, kako to povezujete, kaj mislite o Mondragonu, zakaj vas toliko navdušuje ta njihova zgodba?
Ja, jaz se res moram opravičiti, se me je Erika Žnidaršič na Tarči zaželjela, pa bi dal vse, da bi lahko tukaj vstal, da ne bi bilo treba jeti. Ampak, kar se tiče Mondragona, mogoče res na par takih zanimivih geografskih podatkov. Mondragon ima 200 000 prebivalcev, Mondragon Corporation ima pa 80 000 zaposlenih. In ti si me enkrat povabil, da bi šli tu skupaj pogledati, jaz skupaj čakam, da do tega res pride. Tako da z veseljem grem. Je pa tako, da se mi zdi, da imamo v Sloveniji, poleg seveda središča, poleg velikih mest, velikih, majhnih v svetovnem smislu, imamo kar precej krajev, kjer se ta zateglost, podjetniška kultura pa inovativnost resnično že leta in leta nekako goji. In tu imamo Idrija, Žiri, Železniki, jaz verjamem, da je tudi Zasavje, tukaj prek Murje. In nekako si ob tistem prehodu iz Jugoslavije v Slovenijo samostojno, pa potem v Evropo, je Zasavje zelo trpelo. Ogromno podjetij je propadlo, ampak nekako imamo željo, da na tem pogorišču naredimo nekaj novega, da ustvarimo recimo temu podobno zgodbo. Tako da se mi zdi, da Mondragon je en tak svetov zgled, da nismo samo mi čudni, ampak da tudi drugi, ki so podobno čudni, pa v tem vztrajajo vrsto let, da so uspešni.
Čudovito, jaz sem prepričan, da v roku enega leta gremo za neko odpravo deležnikov iz Slovenije z parimi avtobusi ali pa avioni v avtobusi, da bomo zeleni, do Baskije. Evo, še zadnje vprašanje, gospod Čemažer. Prej ste omenili, da se tudi vi soočate s problemom nasledstva. Torej, problem nasledstva je praktično prisoten pri vseh podjetjih, ki niso na kapitalskih trgih, ki nimajo nekih direktnih konkurentov in firm, ki bi jih kupile, ko se lastniki upokojujejo. In vaš primer je zelo podoben. Ogromno zaposlenih, ki so bili delničarji, se upokojuje, delnice jemlje sabo v pokoj in postanejo kar naenkrat zunanji lastniki. Tukaj me zanima, kako se spremeni njihov odnos, če lahko o tem javno govorite, kako se spremeni odnos delavca, ki je lastnik znotraj podjetja, in odnos zaposlenega, ki gre s podjetjem in delnico vzame sabo in ostane pač zunaj podjetja. To je prvo vprašanje. Drugo vprašanje je pa, kakšen je vaš načrt na kratek rok, na srednji rok? A boste delali na konsolidaciji lastništva, želite, da domel ostane v delavski lasti in se nadgradi, ker, kot ste sami tudi omenili, precej uhaja delnic ven? Ali imate neko drugo vizijo, razmišljate, da domel pripeljete v neko drugo lastniško strukturo?
Ja, za nas v bistvu trendi sigurno niso ta pravi. Trenutno stanje je daleč od tega, da je bilo kritično, smo zelo, tako rekel, stabilni in se nam z lastništvom na dnevni bazi sigurno ne treba ukvarjati. Zdaj mogoče, če začnem pri najmanj kritičnih, ponavadi tisti delničar, ki zapusti podjetje, pa se zaposli nekje drugje, tak delničar najpogosteje tudi rad proda to delnico. Se pravi, jo nekako ne čuti več kot njegovo in zaradi tega je v bistvu ta inštrument odkupa za sklad lastnih delnic zelo priročen. Ta generacija, ki je v bistvu ta model postavila v 90-ih letih, to je bil takrat, to ni bil top management, to je bil srednji management in ta srednji management zdaj v bistvu odhaja ali pa je že skoraj odšel v pokoj. To so tudi delničarji z največjimi deleži, čeprav pri nas je statut tako modro postavljen, da je v bistvu glasovalna pravica omejena na 2%, tako da koncentriranje ni možno, čeprav sta 2 ali pa 3 lastniki, ki imajo več kot 2%, tudi v fizični obliki. Tako da koncentriranje ni možno. No, ti delničarji, ki odhajajo zdaj v pokoj, to so v bistvu tisti, ki so sistem postavljali in so to še zmeraj zelo verjamejo v ta sistem in zagovarjajo, tako da so v bistvu to filozofijo odnesli s seboj in na te delnice gledajo kot, smo rekel, tretji pokojninski steber. Se pravi, je to za njih neka naložba, neka garancija za dobro preživetje tretjega življenjskega obdobja in se v bistvu želijo neke zmerne dividende. V primeru, da imajo pa kakšne večje potrebe, so pa te delnice pripravljeni tudi prodati. In spet se vračam na tisto točko, zato rabimo tudi ta inštrument, da mi lahko kontrolirano te delnice v lastnem skladu odkupimo. Tisto, kar je na tej točki pomemben, pa je del našega načrta, jaz bom rekel na kratek rok ali pa mogoče kratek srednji, je pa v bistvu naš pravilnik, ki zelo jasno opredeljuje, kako iz sklada lastnih delnic mi te delnice prodamo nazaj zaposlenim. Se pravi, izključno jih mi kupujemo z namenom prodaje zaposlenim. In sicer v 2 krogih, prvi krog je krog, ki vključuje za mlade zaposlene, ki še niso lastniki. Se pravi, pogoj prvi je, da je 2 leti zaposlen v podjetju in to so v bistvu tisti, ki prvi dobijo možnost nakupa. Kar ostane, dobimo pa možnost obstoječi lastniki, ki izkazujemo s tem tudi pripadnost, da verjamemo v to zgodbo. To, kar je meni, bom rekel, tako tisto najbolj pomembno, pa bom rekel, se mi kar malo koža naježi, ob pregledu teh seznamov, ko gledamo interesante, kdo bi delnice kupil, so dejansko tisti res aktivno zavzeti zaposleni mladi ali pa srednje mladi, bom rekel 30 do 40 let, ko so na vodstvenih položajih in takim mi bi zares radi omogočili, da postajajo del te naše družine. To so tisti, ki ta vlak peljejo naprej. In to je na srednji rok, bom rekel, model, ki je do leta 2020, do te zakonske spremembe nekako funkcioniral. Nekje 2% delnic nam je uspelo v letu 2019 zaokrožiti, ni to ne vem kakšen hud inštrument, ampak saj bil je eno orodje, ki je omogočal to pot. Tako da jaz bom na tem mestu še enkrat apeliral na to nesrečni člen 90. člena, dajmo najti rešitve, ker obe polji lahko pokrijemo, se pravi tisto osnovni namen zakonodajalca zdaj je pač preprečiti zlorabo. Jaz verjamem, da to z ustrezno dikcijo tega člena znamo to narediti in pa zares prosim, pustimo to možnost, da z izključnim namenom prodaje zaposlenim imamo možnost odkupa delnic tudi v podjetju. To je to, kar je gospod Knez izpostavil.
To se jaz tudi strinjam, da je treba to urediti. Po drugi strani se pa ne bi čist strinjal, da je bilo vse pod kontrolo, ker vsem pa ste prišli na 25% notranjega lastništva, 25% ljudi. Ne. Tako da še vedno je, kljub tem, da ste imeli ta mehanizem, so delnice uhajale zelo hitro ven. Ne.
Zdaj v osnovi jaz težko komentiram, kakšna je bila čist primarna ideja takrat v letu 98 oziroma v obdobju 96 do 98. Verjetno takrat bi bila modra tudi neki člen v statutu, ki bi definiral pot po aktivni dobi, v kakšnem času bi recimo ta
takrat se je tudi gasil požar in
moral odprodati nazaj podjetju. To bi bilo sigurno zelo modro, takrat pač tega v statutu ni bilo. Zdaj, mi tega ne prepoznavamo kot neko hudo kritično poglavje, je pa res, da če na dolgi rok ne bomo spremenili modela, to ne bo več podjetje v lasti zaposlenih.
Ok, najlepša hvala. Mislim, da smo šli že malo čez čas in se opravičujemo za to. Hvala za pozornost, gremo naprej s programom. Sara.
Najlepša hvala vsem za deljenje svojih pogledov in izkušenj. Spoštovani gostje, predlagam, da si vzamemo kratek 10-minutni odmor, nato pa nadaljujemo z mednarodnim panelom.
A boš ti začela ali jaz direktno?
Spoštovani gosti v dvorani in gledalci, ki nas spremljate preko spleta, dobrodošli na drugem delu prvega slovenskega kongresa za ekonomsko demokracijo. Sledi strokovni panel z vrhunskimi mednarodnimi strokovnjaki na temo ekonomske demokracije, ki ga bo moderirala soustanoviteljica in članica strokovnega odbora Inštituta za ekonomsko demokracijo, profesorica doktorica Aleksandra Kanjo Mrčela. Izvolite.
Najlepša hvala, thank you very much. I said to my guests before, as they heard so much of Slovenian, we can speak Slovenian as well. I'm just kidding. So we are switching now from talking about great examples of employee-owned companies in United States and 3 companies in Slovenia to some broader European context. So I'm really grateful for great experts, people who combine 3 things that we really need in Europe if we want more of employee ownership and of economic democracy. Economic democracy is a great thing, and I agree with Minister Luka Mesec, who said something in the line that fight for more of economic democracy is actually very much in line and goes hand in hand with fight for more of democracy in general. So if you want to have people, citizens who are active, participating, co-creating their communities, then you cannot leave that just to be a political, but also very much economic issue as well. So economic democratization, it's on the other hand something that doesn't come very easily. It is a hard and long-lasting process, and you need a lot of strong ideas, but not only strong ideas, but very strong and people who have a lot of energy and a lot of collaboration. And that is what our guests tonight have all in common, so all 3 things combined. You're coming from different countries, from different institutional and legislative frameworks. You will bring us something to give us first thoughts in order to develop discussion later on formally in the panel, or after that more informally outside, on 2 important things. What are already existing best practices in different environments, and maybe even more ambitiously, what are the things that we still don't have and might be some sort of a unified model that will bring us more all together. So what we are lacking in the way. So let me please first of all present our 4 eminent guests and colleagues. First here is Professor Fred Freundlich, an American living and working in Basque Country in Spain for now many years, in 1995. He's a professor at Mondragon University there and a member of its Lasky Institute for Cooperative Research. He teaches courses on cooperatives and ownership of enterprise and does research and company training on intercooperation among cooperative firms and the effects of shared ownership at work. I just want to tell him again that what he didn't understand maybe previously was that we all will come very soon to Mondragon to visit you. So our next guest is Ms. Pascale Newland, Director of NPI, the Netherlands Participation Institute, a non-profit foundation for the promotion of employee shared ownership in the Netherlands. After being a consultant at the Institute for 8 years, Pascale is director of the Institute since 2013. Her background is international business, Indonesian language, and human resource management. Our next guest is Professor Nicolas Aubert, who teaches at the Aix-Marseille University, France, and he is a fellow at the Institute for the Study of Employee Ownership and Profit Sharing at Rutgers University. His research focuses on the effects of employee ownership and corporate performance and governance, and on the financial risks of employee ownership. He is a member of the Scientific Council of the French Federation of Employee Ownership. And last but not least, a colleague from Italy, our neighbor, Ermanno Tortiglia, is an associated professor at the University of Trento, Department of Economics and Management. His research activity focuses on the institutionalist theory of the firm, organizational studies, personnel economics, and human resource management applied to research on third sector organizations, social enterprises, non-profit organizations, and cooperative enterprises, with particular reference to, of course, worker cooperatives. So I will pose you I was told to have just one question, but it will be a question of a professor with a few sub-questions. So I would like to hear, and all of us are interested, in what you will present in your countries as the best practice, as something that is a mechanism or the model that works best in terms of supporting economic democratization. And if you can say a little bit about who were supporters, how it comes to the fora, that model or mechanism, and what were the obstacles or difficulties in establishing this mechanism. And maybe, to be ambitious, as I said, are you lacking anything and could imagine a better future for all of us based on experiences in your countries? So I will give you the time. I will look a little bit on the time, and they will help me with giving me my telephone. And you just go from Fred as the first, and then on. Fred, here is.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexandra, for the introduction. Thank everyone for coming, Tay and the Institute for organizing the event. He was 10 centimeters taller before he started organizing this. Minister Luka, also, thank you very much for being involved and showing your interest. Mondragon, for those who have not heard of it, is an integrated network of employee-owned cooperative enterprises, mostly located in the Basque Country of northern Spain. There are 95 of them. They have about 80,000 people in their workforce in different parts of the world. They've been very successful as businesses in 4 different areas: in advanced manufacturing, in finance, in retail, and in knowledge businesses. But as Minister Luka pointed out, they've also been, as a result, been successful in community development. The county where many Mondragon companies are located has the lowest poverty rate, the lowest rate of industrial accidents, and the highest per capita income of the 20 counties in the Basque Country. And it seems very clear that it's a result of a high concentration of employee-owned cooperative companies there. The best practice, aside from broadly shared employee ownership, of course, the best practice, I think, in Mondragon, in response to your question, is something that's called, that we call inter-cooperation. That is collaboration among employee-owned companies in a very detailed and serious way. In Mondragon, we do this in 2 different ways. One of them is by creating institutions and policies in common, right? So a bank oriented towards finance of, initially, for its initial period, towards finance of employee-owned cooperatives, a venture capital fund technology, research and development, and a series of other institutions. Creating those institutions in common means that we can create them to best serve our interests and our needs as employee-owned companies, which in significant ways are not the same as the needs of conventional companies. The second kind of intercooperation is simply business-to-business collaboration, right? 2 or 12 or 22 of the companies in the network will work together to take advantage of what they see as new business opportunities or gain economies of scale or look for other kinds of business synergies. There are dozens of examples of this kind of company-to-company collaboration within the Mondragon Group. The support for this is, an institutional, legal, legislative framework evolved over the years. Mondragon was founded the first company was founded in 1955-56 during the Franco dictatorship. The institutional environment then was not especially favorable, though the economy had started to grow significantly. But over the generations, a very elaborate institutional and legislative framework has evolved that's been very helpful. That aside, the greatest support for the success of Mondragon comes from this employee ownership in an integrated network fashion. It's simply stated, it's that we know that we are stronger together. It's a cliche, but it's nonetheless true. We can do things together as 10 or 27 or 92 companies that we cannot do alone. We make sacrifices, modest sacrifices, and we all benefit from them. And one of the institutions and policies that we've created in common has to do with mutual support. Sometimes companies get into trouble. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience, but in the Basque Country, sometimes companies get in trouble. And when I can depend on the financial, technological, and management assistance of other companies in my sector or other companies that are employee-owned and in the network with me, then I'm much more confident about being able to survive any difficulties that might arise. Obstacles. The soft stuff that Steve Smith was talking about before relating to ownership culture. I mean, many of the companies are 20, 30, 40 years old. It's a constant challenge in the cultural values environment in which we live, all of us, more individualistic, more materialistic, more leisure-oriented. It's a challenge to educate, communicate, develop cooperative, collaborative values and work and management practices. It's just another process that companies in this sector have to develop and work at continuously. What would make it? What might I add? In an ideal world, I would add education. We were talking about this among ourselves before. People who are in school, whether they're age 8 or age 18 or older, they hear nothing about different ways of organizing enterprises. They have the standard model that they see in the media and on television and the movies in their minds. They don't frequently conceive that there is another way to organize and operate and own a business. I think education about this that is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate from people starting at a very early age, but certainly in secondary school and in universities, no matter what people are studying, I think they should hear about different ways, experience different ways of organizing business. I would close by saying that promoting employee ownership is the single best policy for simultaneously promoting business competitiveness and social cohesion and human well-being. There is no other single policy that does those two things together. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation of IED. Thank you, Minister, for being here as well, because I think it's a very relevant topic in Europe, in the world, to do good. We need more tools to bring employees and employers closer together. Let me first frame how the Dutch system works, because that clears more and gives you information how we in Holland do an ESOP model. As we see in Holland, we have a very liberal system. We have the boundaries of law, and within the boundaries of law, we can create our own models for employee ownership. So what you see is when a company starts as a cooperative or as a limited, they continue being a cooperative or being a limited. And if you are cooperative, you can create your co-ownership through a cooperative, and if you are limited, you can create co-ownership with shares, and as we have in Holland, we can do it also through a foundation, just like an ESOP. So we have all the legal structures to build and create your own ESOP model. So what we do when companies would like to start a plan, we look at, okay, what's the legal structure, and from there on we start creating an ESOP. We don't call it an ESOP, but we just call it ownership, co-ownership, participation, plan, what the company would like to name it. What we see over the years is that in Holland, it's not a pension scheme. We've got very good pension facilities, but not all companies do have pension schemes. But you see that the young companies would like to start schemes for various reasons. And it could be that it's a succession, the owner is leaving the company, but it could also be because it's a young, vibrant organization with a lot of important employees, because what you see nowadays is that your employees are your most valuable asset of a company. Without good employees, you cannot grow, you cannot continue doing your business. So that's what we see these days in Holland, a lot of companies starting with plans. We see also that many companies have a plan, but not all companies are willing to do a broad-based scheme. And our organization only helps companies willing to do a broad-based scheme. So what we do is we help them develop their own model within the boundaries of law. And so if we look at the best practices, it could be any of the structures mentioned, but what we see is that the best examples are the companies where you see that the co-ownership is not just a tool or a gadget they implement. It is a business model they like to create together. So if it's a strategy of the company that the employees are co-owners, you see that the plan has the most success. What you also see is that if the companies give the employees a certain amount of voting rights, it could be direct shares, it could be via a foundation, and the foundation is the shareholder and has the voting rights, you see that if the voting rights are done in a good way, you see that the effect of the plan is bigger. You create the culture in the company, and then the company will benefit the most of having a plan. So, if you look at the best practices in Holland, you see that it's a broad-based scheme with voting rights. Everybody benefits from the financial success of the company. That's the growth, it's the yearly dividends or the profits that's been divided, and every employee in the company has a piece of the pie. So Looking back, I've been in this field for, I realized last month, 17 years now. I've seen a lot of companies implementing plans. It's increasing, and especially broad-based schemes are increasing. And I see that the best plans are win-win for everybody. Difficulties, well, Holland, you think, well, we would have some tools for helping companies to do this. Unfortunately not. We're so liberal that companies can decide if they want to have a plan or not. And how they're doing this, it's up to them. It could be this way or that way. So it would be great if we would have also some models in Holland with some benefits for the companies and for the employees. We're still lacking that. And because we just have the boundaries of law, it's not always ideal for employee ownership. So certain laws and certain tax rules are not favorable for the plans we have. So there's still a lot to do for us in Holland to improve that. And we were talking about a wish list this afternoon. Well, a wish list would be, European Union is a union, but we're not united. We are different countries in a union. That means that each country has their own fiscal and tax laws. And if you have a plan in one country, it cannot be done in another country, the same plan, because the law is different in the other country. And it would be nice if we, at least in the European Union, have a sort of a model which applies for all countries with the same benefits. So all the multinational companies could use that plan. And, well, what Stephen said, why don't make it a worldwide ESOP? Yes, of course, that will be the most ideal situation, that at least you have some sort of system which can be applied everywhere in the world. So each company can apply the same plan for their employees. And it isn't said, or perhaps it was said, but my Slovenian is a bit rusty, so I couldn't understand everything. But it is evidence-based. There's been so much research on employee ownership that it is proven over the years that it is a tool that is good for employees, for companies, and also for the local and national economic where the company is based. So we can all benefit from having more ESOPs in a country. Okay, thank you.
This will be also on my wish list, having some kind of European ESOP model. The French participation system has a long story, but I will try to make it short. It's all started with General de Gaulle, as you asked to mention, the people who developed this kind, the economic democracy. We cannot directly refer to as economic democracy because the way de Gaulle developed it, it was a threefold system of participation. Participation in equity, participation in profit, participation in decision-making. The story says that he couldn't implement the last part, which was co-determination, like in Germany, you know, when there are employees on the board of directors. It was developed by the last pact law before the COVID pandemic, but it's not as developed as in Germany. But we have profit sharing, either mandatory profit sharing for all the companies hiring more than 50 people. So basically it means that when you hire more than 50 people, you need to have some kind of profit sharing agreement. The profit sharing bonuses are given by an equation, which is defined by the law. It was debated in the 60s. So it's an old and an old story. There are also companies can implement also voluntary profit sharing, which were developed in France in the 1959, so a long time ago. I mentioned also the years because we don't really have something really new in France since then, since the 60s, and the company savings plans, which allow employees to invest their profit-sharing bonuses in different kind of investment options, including company stocks. It works much like the 401k in the US, where you have a plan, and you can select different kind of asset, including company stocks. So initially, it's important to mention, given the context, that that mandatory profit sharing was developed at the time that in France and also in other countries, the capital was scarce in the 60s. The profit sharing bonuses, the profit sharing was frozen. It was frozen within the company to ensure more capital for the company. It was quasi-equity in the accounting terms. And so this money has been invested in company stocks or left in the company to provide funding to the company. So this is something that is in place for years, but as you may know, the state is very involved in the economy in France, and most of the large listed companies in France are related to the state. Most of them, and the important wave of development of employee ownership was at the end of the 80s, when most of these companies got privatized. And part of the equity of this company was granted to the employees. But the difference with the ESOP system is that in France, the employees have to pay for these shares. They have to contribute money from their own pocket. Of course, they can have matching contribution in company stocks from the employee. They can use profit-sharing bonuses. They can use also their own money, but it's a very big difference with the ESOP system. You have to put some money from your pocket. And the money you invest in employee ownership within this company savings plans is frozen 5 years. So if you want to get all the tax breaks on the company side or on the employee side, you need to have your money frozen 5 years. And something very important also in France to mention is that there is some kind of taboo to mix employee ownership investment with retirement. You cannot, we have some kind of, we have some pension funds, but we're not really talking about pension funds because most of the retirement system in France is not financed by this kind of, is not private, like in other countries. It's ruled and organized by the state. So you don't have transfer of money in the, you have transfer of money between generations, but not between, you're not saving for your own pension. So this is forbidden, this is prohibited to have employee ownership in retirement plan. And this is a taboo that some want to they contest. There is this idea in France to promote some kind of mutual fund invested in employee, in companies with employee ownership. And so you can create some kind of diversification by investing in employee, in firms with employee ownership. I'm not saying employee-owned firms, because these companies where you find employee ownership in France, these are large listed companies, even often with less than 3 or 2.5% of the equity owned by the employees. So it's not really significant. Of course, in terms of the number of employee owners we have in France, you can find in statistics at the European level that France is always the first country in terms of the number of employee owners. It's about 3 million, but it's not really significant in terms of what they actually own. They don't really have a say in the company decision making. It's really not like employee-owned companies as we know them in the US with the ESOP or in other European countries. So the thing that I will change in France, so it's the same wish list, to have an ESOP not only in France but a European model that we can use to promote ESOP conversion for SMEs, because if you can find employee ownership in large listed corporations in France, you don't have much of it in SMEs. So it's not really developed. Most of the employee owners are part of the companies that you may know, like L'Oréal, Bouygues, this kind of Total, this kind of large company that are often global. So we were very... They visited my university in June, and I have to say I was very impressed by the model you develop at the Institute of Economic Democracy, and we really would like to work on implementing it in France. We work with lawyers from French lawyers to do that, and it's a very good project we have, and maybe after this conference we will discuss of a global European model. I would like to end my speech by thanking the minister for being here, the government, and the staff of the government, and also the staff of the IAD for organizing all the conference. Thank you very much.
Hello, good night everybody. So I come from Italy, and yeah, Italy, I think, is known as one of the countries in which the cooperative movement is strongest, because Italy has a very big cooperative movement, which amounts more or less to 5% of the GDP, and more than 5% of the workforce. The workforce is close to 10%, because these are most of all low capital intensity companies, so they employ a lot of people, even if the economic value added is not exactly equivalent. So it's a very big employer in Italy. However, Europe is very heterogeneous, so Italy is a quite strange case, because Italian cooperatives are very different from, for example, from employee ownership. So I will say something more later on. I mean, Italian cooperatives, the basic law was passed just after the war, so after the fall of the fascist regime. So the basic law has always been the same since 1947. So the basic elements, then some special laws were passed afterwards, of course, but the structure has been the same for 80 years. And they are quite collectivistic, meaning it means simply that most of capital is collective ownership. So the capital is owned by the cooperative, is not owned by the members. That's all. I mean, so they resemble a bit more the old socialist, model of ex-Yugoslav model. Maybe there was some influence with, I don't know, between the two systems, but in any case, it was born in 1947. What are the best practices? We have two quite different but very important traditions. One is the non-religious, laical, socialist or leftist tradition, which is based most of all in central Italy, and usually is very strong in the most traditional typologies of cooperatives, so worker cooperative, producer and consumer cooperatives. And then we also have a very strong Christian democratic tradition, so-called white cooperatives, which instead are much stronger in credit cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, and more recently in the so-called social cooperatives, which basically produce social services, so care services. They work with the public sector. So the two traditions are quite, more or less, they are equivalent in terms of their strength. I would say, I mean, the best practice is stability. I mean, the Italian movement is big, is very stable. Many cooperatives in Italy now are older than 1 century. They are overcoming 100 years. They've been shown to be resilient to crisis. So they, for example, one clear evidence is that they lay off less during crisis. And so they have also a stabilizing effect on the economic system. Probably this is connected with the structure of the capital. Since capital is collective, and it's impossible to sell it, and so it's stable in that very simple sense. Actually, Italian cooperatives basically cannot be demutualized, because if you demutualize a cooperative, you have to renounce all the value of the capital. So it's quite meaningless. I mean, nobody does that. So in this sense, it is very stable. The limitation, of course, I mean, is that economic and financial incentives are weak because it's, you know, members don't have strong incentives to invest in the company, apart from the basic fact that the company has to survive. So quite often they are low capital intensity. They are spread most of all in labor-intensive sectors. They resort more than other companies to leverage, so to external finance, to debt finance. And so this makes them quite weak on the financial side. And they can have difficulties in growing. This is, you can see this because they didn't have a very good dynamic over the years, even if overall they are growing, especially in the service sector, because probably, again, in the service sector, you have low capital intensity activities, human capital is more important, and so it is easier to create and to make cooperatives develop. Coming to employee ownership, basically in Italy we don't have any employee ownership at all, because in conventional companies basically there is no employee ownership because unions don't want it. They don't like employee ownership. They have a more traditional kind of adversarial attitude. So the risk is entrepreneurial risk, is the capitalist risk, so they don't want to get involved into ownership. They only bargain on wages and benefits and so on. So it's there are some agreements at the local level, but really very limited. Cooperatives, again, you don't, membership or ownership, so in worker cooperatives, employee ownership is very limited. It's not impossible because the law does not forbid membership ownership. So a single cooperative can implement plans in which employees become actually the owner of large shares of the capital of the company. Some cooperatives do this, but since it is not compulsory, there is no, it's just purely voluntary. There is no compulsory mechanism at the legal level, so it's, again, is not very widespread. Most cooperatives just reinvest all their surpluses, profits into collective reserves. This is the most standard way to invest, probably because collective reserves are felt to be more stable, again, to give stability to the company. After all, after you put your profits into collective reserves, you can use it and you don't have to think about, for example, paying it back to members and so on. So basically, the project you are advocating, I think it's very interesting because I've been reading quite a lot of David Ellerman's works, and I know that he has a very long story of working on these topics. And I think he achieved a very, very important result because he created a model that is really robust. And there have been other models, but his model is really very interesting. But in Italy, I think you would you would have to create it anew. So to put a new typology of cooperative, basically. As we were saying before, actually, most cooperatives in Italy are so-called prevalent mutuality. Now there is no time, unluckily, but because they have some tax advantages, so they are very regulated by law in terms of collective ownership and so on, just because, sorry. Just because of this reason, because of tax advantages, so they have to meet some strict requirements. There is a second model which is much less widespread, that is not prevalent mutuality. In that case, you can create your own individual ownership, so it is compatible with ESOP, with this kind of ESOP model that you are advocating. But you will need to create it, because we don't have anything like that right now. Paradoxically, then I stop. This new government, this right-wing government, for sure they don't like collectivistic cooperatives. I think, I mean, this is the tradition is very clear. So maybe the left would not be able, because they are very much linked to the Italian tradition of cooperation. This new government, nobody knows, maybe some of them may like this an ESOP model of cooperation, so paradoxically there may be some opportunity in this direction in the following years. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all for really rich answers. We learned a lot, and at least for me, it was an opportunity to have another list of questions. I cannot ask those questions, but I'm saying that I cannot ask questions, but I will really, it shows how different we are in one European Union, how very, very different we are, and how probably it's time now to get some strength and more of economic democracy through building something, some institutions that are so important for us and special for us, needed, especially designed for employee-owned companies at the European level. I will not stop here. That is not my. I will really, regardless, I will not look to the today, but ask you if you do have some questions for our guests. This is a unique opportunity to ask this panel anything that you want to ask now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian
Verbic. We will take
Verbic.
just 3 questions.
Yeah, I will be very brief. So, Christian Verbic, Pennsylvania Investors and Shareholders Association. So I would like to use this opportunity and definitely ask, what shall we do? Because thank you very much for your presentations and opinions, dear guests, but probably you have an idea what should be done to make another step, a significant step toward European network of economic democracy. By the way, I believe that we, of course, if the states are not willing to do something on the European level regarding it, there is still civil society. It's civil society, the companies that have practice of it and the interest maybe to make common European frame or platform, at least the guidelines regarding regarding the employee ownership, because we do have it and we would definitely like to support it even more. Let me just mention, and I will stop here, I'm a member at the European Commission's Financial Services Users Group, let's say. There is not even one initiative regarding this matter. So, I mean, I believe that there should be something done regarding it. There is European Federation of Employee Ownership, and we are supporting their activities, but still there is no formal initiative regarding it on European level, at least as far as I know. And on the other side, you have European pension programs and stuff like that, that it's probably connected or could be connected to it. But please, maybe you have some concrete ideas regarding that. Thank you.
Some of us will answer. Comments, questions? I will not ask this many times. Okay, we have just one question now, and I'm sure that we will discuss a lot of what you have said outside. But let us try to answer this very hard question.
Well, you're correct. From the European Union, the topic employee ownership is not on the agenda of any commission in the EU. It used to be Barnier from France. He was one of the few who had the topic employee ownership in his commission. So we're lacking support from there. We have a lot of national organizations like d.o.o, like SNPI, but we work on a national level. And we have so much work on a national level that we do not have time and funding to go into Europe. That's a very simple reason not to go there. There are some platforms in the European Union, but they're all volunteers. They have small budgets, and there's not a platform uniting each country, each institute. So it's lacking. There's no framework yet. So that should be arranged, but it's all about funding. Who is going to create a network? Who's going to fund the lobby activities in Brussels? So maybe this is a message for the minister. You have good connections in the European Union. Maybe it's time, if you are a pioneer in this country, you can show the European Union that there is a need for a framework on this topic. It's an important topic. It can bring the European Union a lot of good. So it's time we create something. I'm willing to help with creating, but I'm also lacking funding.
Nicolas?
I've got time.
Nicolas wanted to say something.
One law that promoted employee ownership in France was voted in 2006 by Thierry Breton. He's now the European Commissioner for the Internal Market. So it's called the Loi Breton, the Breton law. So he may be someone to network with, to kind of explain this ESOP model. He's in charge. Took note of it. The mission of Thierry Breton is to contribute to a comprehensive long-term strategy for Europe's industrial future and to the new SME strategy to help them scale up and expand, including through improved access to finance. I think we are in the scope of the mission of Thierry Breton. But yes, this is something we
should
work
on that. I mean, with such a strong intellectual support, with a model that is already there, and it is supported by people who really do know about what is needed to, and with political will, I think that many things could be done, and especially from a small country that is not seen as someone who would like to dominate and who would like to push their model upon other countries. So we are in a position to maybe fight for something more than what we have now, and that is just being on the margin. And in time when a lot of political and economic questions could be answered but by more of economic democratization. I don't want to push two of you if you don't want to add, but this is the last opportunity this evening from this podium. So if
just
you want.
Few seconds. No, my only reflection is that maybe a general framework for employee ownership may be difficult, not impossible, but difficult because then you have to involve unions, all countries, all parties, and so maybe really complicated. But instead, a very specific project like the one you are advocating, so this specific kind of ESOP system may be easier, paradoxically, because why not? You are just introducing something that is completely different from all the rest. So maybe there is less political resistance. So.
It's a very specific kind of a recommendation with respect to SMEs and ownership succession. There's rich territory for employee ownership when retiring owners don't have heirs or partners. They don't want to lose their legacy. They often have strong relationships with their workforces. Shared ownership is a natural solution. Lots of different publics need education about this. One public in particular are the accountants and the lawyers and the pension advisors, retirement advisors that small and medium-sized enterprise owners go to. Many of them have no idea. I mean, perhaps it's already on your agenda, but many of them have no idea about alternatives to liquidation or sale to the competition or what have you. So that one particular audience that might help push this agenda along.
I would like to conclude with wisdom from Mondragon. If we are together and collaborate, we are stronger. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you very much to the audience.
Najlepša hvala moderatorki in vsem gostom. Isaac Newton je nekoč rekel, da je to, kar vemo, kapljica in to, česar ne, morje. Upamo, da smo nocoj dodali kar nekaj kapljic v skupni zaliv znanja. Eno zanimivo kapljico pa bo svojo naslednjo točko dodal tudi naš glasbeni gost. Ste se kdaj vprašali, koliko je tunelov do Maribora? Tudi če se niste, boste odgovor dobili kmalu. Koliko je tunelov do MB Recycleman?
Yeah. Vozim po lokalni 40 čez bumper, ruski policaj, speed limit, kalkulator, CD-rola prinsa, vreme je ugodno, ptica v letu svojem, horizont zahodno. Na travniku so konji za električno ograjo, zvoki od kitare v mojem radiju rezgetajo. Sliša za oddajo, spet iščejo talente, nimam teh problemov, sem za ekoelemente. Koliko je tunelov do Maribora, koliko je dolga avtocesta, koliko je semaforjev do naslednjega predmestja, koliko je tunelov do Maribora, koliko je dolga avtocesta, koliko je semaforjev do naslednjega predmestja. Na vozniški piše vozniško dovoljenje in še nekaj smešnega, kar vrača mi veselje. Model Evropske skupnosti, pa to sem zveri vedel, v Tajskem morju plavat, zrele res bi sedel, Bob Marleya igrajo na vsakemu koraku. Enim je skrivnostno všeč, je še bedaku. Legenda je legenda, ker poje iz srca in tudi čez zmerni sonca. I love Slovenija. Koliko je tunelov do Maribora, koliko je dolga avtocesta, koliko je semaforjev do naslednjega predmestja, koliko je tunelov do Maribora, koliko je dolga avtocesta, koliko je semaforjev do naslednjega predmestja. Yeah. Daleč tam za hribom se je rodila pesem, v bližnji trgovini pobrali so vas česen. Tunelo je lih tok za eno dobro plato, res bi zvel pasal, pojest vege solato. Srečil sem krov na pumpi, velik kakor torta, Slovenije ponos, Japonci imajo pa robota. Ekipa je razkirala, ker je za spakirat, 5 jointov do kosila, spet na cesto manevrirat. Kolik je tunelo do Maribora, odvisnost, ki štartaš. Kolik je dolga avtocesta, odvisnost, ki štartaš. Kolik je semaforjev, do naslednjega predmestja. Kolik je tunelo do Maribora, kolik je dolga avtocesta, kolik je semaforjev, do naslednjega predmestja. Bon voyage, bon amigos, madame, messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to Ljubljana, to this place. Special City Museum of Ljubljana says hello. Radio Študent, Recycle Man na sceni, drugo leto koncerti, represent, check. Thank you.
S tem smo prišli do konca uradnega dela Kongresa ekonomske demokracije. Naj izkoristim to priložnost, da se zahvalim vsem, ki so omogočili nocojšnji dogodek. Hvala Mestni občini Ljubljana, Mestnemu muzeju Ljubljana in Šentjakobskemu gledališču Ljubljana. Hvala našim sponzorjem. Brez vas dogodek ne bi bil mogoč. Devesoft, Domel, Inea, 3FS, C-Astral, Studio Moderna, Etiketa, M-Sora, IEDC Bled in ERBT. Posebna zahvala tudi Fundaciji Rosa Luksemburg in Spirit Slovenija. Hvala gostinstvu Koren za catering in Radiu Študent za prenos v živo ter tehnično podporo dogodku. Najlepša hvala tudi vsem govorcem in seveda iz srca hvala vsem gostom, ki ste se udeležili dogodka ali nas spremljali preko spleta. Na koncu naj vas prosim samo še za nekaj minut potrpežljivosti, da lahko pripravimo prostor, nato pa vas vljudno vabim k pogostitvi in druženju ob DJ spremljavi Recycle Mana. Hvala za pozornost in nasvidenje.